How's it going, everybody? This is the Nitty Gritty. My name is Chad. With me, as usual, is Leonard. This is a show about pro wrestling, and this week we are going to be doing one of our rebooks. Specifically, we are going to be tackling SuperClash 3. And this is an event that I had not seen before. Leonard, I believe you suggested this, right?
This is my suggestion, and I had watched this about a year ago at this time. I think it had gotten posted to Facebook to YouTube around that period. My wife was out of town, which is usually when I watch terrible wrestling programming, and that's how I first saw this. So when this came up for us to do another rebook, this show was kind of in the back of my mind.
And you loved it so much you wanted to revisit it, and we'll get to that. So
Love may be a strong word, but I think there's a lot of interesting elements around it
yeah,
worth discussion, and certainly a lot of badness on it to be rebooked.
well, let's get to some of the history. Now, I will say this right off the bat. There's a lot of videos about Super Clash 3 out there. Other people have covered the history and the behind the scenes goings on. There are podcast clips and full episode interviews with Jerry Lawler, who's talked about it a lot. So if you want really detailed history, please go look at any of those videos, which are very good. I checked out some of them myself.
Yes, I watched Wrestling with Regrets review on it. Of course, friend of the show, Brian Zane, and then Wrestling Bios as well. I think are
Right.
do two pretty good, reviews and summaries and touch on what was going on behind the scenes. And again, we're
Right.
mostly rebooking the show, but it is important to kind of recap a little bit about it, what was going on.
Absolutely. And I will also add that at one point, yes, this was on the WWE network. And I know some, countries outside the US still have access to the network. So it might still be there. But in terms of US people who would like to check out this show, you have to watch it on YouTube. And it'd be easy to say, oh, well, this is available on the WWE's YouTube channel. It is not, as far as I saw. Maybe it is buried deep there somewhere, but um, you cannot find this on Netflix, which carries the WWE Classic events now. You cannot find this, of course, on ESPN or Peacock. So you have to look for it on YouTube. I just think it's interesting that you really have to do some digging to find some of these classic non-WWE events. Um, but in any event, let's get to the history of Super Clash 3. It was produced by the American Wrestling Association, AWA. It obviously is the third in the series, with the previous ones being held in 1985 and 1987. And amazingly, a fourth installment took place in 1990. But Super Clash 3 was held December 13th, 1988, from the UIC Pavilion in Chicago. And that is the same venue that would have Flair's Steamboat at the Chi-Town Rumble a couple months after this. And it was the only AWA show to be broadcast on pay-per-view. The buy rate was 0.5, roughly around 45,000 buys, and the attendance was 1,672. And the other promotions involved in this were, well, what we know as WCCW, but they were World Class Wrestling Association at this point, and also the POWW, Powerful Women of Wrestling, and the Memphis-based Championship Wrestling Association.
It should be mentioned that the powerful women of wrestling go by POW, but technically that should be PWOW.
PWOW, yes,
Yes.
absolutely. So this show was poorly received. It was not a financial success. They obviously had limited options with which to promote it. And soon after, the WCWA was bought out by Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett. They merged with CWA to become the United States Wrestling Association. Some historical context going back to 1988. So prior to 1988, independent meant regional territories working under the umbrella of the NWA, of course. However, the landscape had shifted fundamentally in November of 1988, right before this, when Ted Turner bought Jim Crockett Promotions and rebranded it as World Championship Wrestling. That obviously meant that it was the beginning of the end for the traditional territory system, because WWF and WCW were the two giants, and then the smaller promotions kind of began to etch out what we now know as the indie scene. Also, Bruiser Brody was murdered in July of this year, in Puerto Rico. WWF had the second Survivor Series in November 24th. Right before this, they followed that with WrestleFest 88 on December 30th, and WCW would hold Starrcade 88 on December 26th.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot going on around
Yeah.
this.
Now, one thing that you didn't mention to pop back a section is that shortly after this, the AWA pulled out of this partnership, and it was because of dispute over money with the show. Even though it was a failure, supposedly Vergania did not pay any of the talent, including his own, and did not give any dispersal of funds to any of the other promoters. And I know that Greg has stated that the promoters are supposed to pay their own people, but that still doesn't excuse the fact that Vern did not give any payouts, supposedly, from what I've heard, to his people or to the promoters.
Yeah, there you can like a lot of the other videos get into kind of the minutia of the payments, and it is kind of let's just say this. There's two sides to every story, but there was a lot of shadiness happening there. They talked about the shadiness of Vern and the AWA in one of the previous super clashes. So yeah, it's
But it basically speaks to the fact that this partnership, which was an attempt to compete nationally with WCW and WWF, didn't go anywhere at all, and it was
nowhere.
primarily due to the lack of the promoters being able to work together. And you talked about World Class and CWA eventually buying out World Class, but I do know that there were disputes there too. Primarily Kevin not being happy with a lot of what was going on. Kevin Von Erich, the idea that he couldn't get dates on Jerry Lawler, they couldn't get Lawler to come down to Texas. It was like, oh, Memphis wants all the Texas people, but the Texas people can't get nobody from Memphis. Seemed to be some issues there as well.
Right, and if you listen to Jerry Lawler talk about it, he doesn't flat out say it, but it didn't sound like he was keen on going there. So let's run down the card here quickly. First match, Chavo Guerrero, Hector Guerrero, and Mondo Guerrero defeated Cactus Jack and the Rock and Roll RPMs of Mike Davis and Tommy Lane in 6 minutes 35 seconds. Eric Embry defeated Jeff Jarrett to win the WCCW World Light Heavyweight Championship in 4 minutes and 13 seconds. Jimmy Valiant defeated Wayne Bloom in 24 seconds. Iceman King Parsons defeated Brickhouse Brown to retain the World Class Texas Heavyweight Championship in 5 minutes and 41 seconds. The Top Guns of Derek Duke and Ricky Rice, along with Wendy Richter, defeated Bad Company, Pat Tanaka and Paul Diamond, and Medusa Michelli, with Diamond Dallas Page at ringside in 5 minutes and 43 seconds. Greg Gagne defeated Ronnie Garvin by countout to win the AWA International Television Championship in 5 minutes 52 seconds. The Syrian Terrorists defeated Bambi, Randy May, Lori Lynn, Luna Vachon, Malibu, Nina, Peggy Lee Leather, and Pocahontas in a street fight lingerie battle royal.
That was a hat on a hat on a hat.
Yep, 8 minutes 36 seconds. Sergeant Slaughter defeated Colonel De Beers in a boot camp match, which I don't have the time for whatever reason. The Samoan SWAT team of Fatu and Samu with Buddy Roberts defeated Michael P.S. Hayes and Steve Cox to retain the World Class Tag Team Championship, 7 minutes 53 seconds.
It should be mentioned that Steve Cox's nickname was Do It To It Steve Cox, which is one of my favorite nicknames.
Wahoo McDaniel defeated Manny Fernandez in an Indian strap match, 7 minutes 48 seconds. Jerry Lawler, the AWA World Heavyweight Champion, defeated Kerry Von Erich, WCCW World Heavyweight Champion, by referee's decision to unify the titles, 18 minutes 53 seconds. And the last match, the Rock and Roll Express, Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson defeated they went against the stud stable of Jimmy Golden and Robert Fuller. It ended in a double countout in 5 minutes and 52 seconds. And so this was the first time I saw this event. And, this is not me trying to exaggerate, but Leonard, this is one of the worst events I've seen. And
we're not going to rebook something. I mean, the idea of the rebook is that we go after bad shows. And yes, this is bad. And it should be mentioned, you just read off all the times, like every match was like 5 to 7 minutes, except for the title match.
Yes. So my thoughts, most of the matches were not given a lot of time. And a lot of the matches had crap finishes. And they had crap finishes because the promoters couldn't agree on anything. Everybody wanted their guys to win. And it's like dealing with children. Like, it's crazy to me that these men got in a room thinking we are going to do something to combat WWF. And then when they couldn't agree on anything, no one in that room said, hey guys, if you're going to do this, you're going to have to come to an agreement on some of these matches, or this is going to look like crap. And that's exactly what happens. It looks like crap. Now, like for example, like the Jeff Jarrett Eric Embry match, is that match bad? No, not necessarily. But they didn't get any time, so it's like forgettable. That's like, but some of the matches, like the fact that they like everybody talks about the Kerry Von Erich Jerry Lawler match being good, like and yes, the work in it is fine, but it is one of the worst finishes to a main event match that I've ever seen. Like you see, if you watch UFC or MMA events, you see the referee or the doctor stop because of blood or a bad cut. That happens, but not when that guy is the aggressor. like that's the worst part of it. Like
Yes.
if it was Kerry Von Erich on his back, like barely conscious, and Jerry Lawler was like dropping the fists or whatever, I would say, okay, referee's decision, not very cool, but I understand. In this case, he's about to win, and the ref's like, nope. Like it's so stupid. It ruins the match for me, despite the match being largely not bad.
It's the best match on the card, easily. But yes, the ending does certainly hurt that. And I like how you said main event in air quotes.
Yeah, for
Because
our
because
audio.
the idea was the tag match was going to go on last to send the fans home happy, and then that ended did a double count out.
Like, yeah, and that was confusing too. We're obviously going to get to our rebook. Honestly, like we don't even have to do a rebook. You could just say, give the matches a little bit more time and give them finishes, and there's your rebook.
Like, yeah, and it wouldn't be great, but it would be a lot better.
Right,
because there is good talent here. I liked kind of the best part of this is kind of shuffling the deck and seeing what you can do. And we've had shows where the talent has just been not there, like Heroes of Wrestling, where everyone is just too old to really do anything.
right.
But here you do have talented people, and like you said, you could make this show good just by giving everyone an extra a few minutes, making every match close to 10 at least, and just giving them at least clean finishes, or the heel wins by cheating. The even manager interference. That's fine. Yes.
This is like a big event that you're trying to get across how great these companies are. Like I can see like one kind of crap finish, but like by and large, like you're trying to get the message across that you want people to watch. So Leonard, do you have any final thoughts on your opinion of the event before we move to our rebook?
I think we've covered that. I think this makes an interesting rebook based on the talent available, and I think if you take that talent and you try to make some simple but easy to follow storylines, which is what I try to do, I think you can have a decent show. And let me mention that we always do some stipulations when we do these cards. So you had to have a unification match, but it didn't have to be Kerry versus Jerry. You could do something else with that. You had to have an intergender six-person, and you had to have a tailor-made gimmick match, something like Sergeant Slaughter's boot camp match or Wahoo McDaniel's Indian strap match. You could do that. You could do something different. So those were the steps that we gave ourselves.
So
and I
you
believe
said, did you say intergender intergender six person match? Because yes. I have a 6-man match, but I don't think I put an intergender on there.
It can be 6 per. I had 6. And I had intergender because I think there were so many women on here that we should use the women, and there was an intergender.
Right. Okay. I did use the women.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Whatever you got is fine. Some sort of basically there were so many women. The women need to be used. So
absolutely. So
I think I have 10 matches.
I have more than you. I tried to kind of mirror how many matches were on the card, which I think there's like 11 or 12.
Yeah.
So I'll do my first 2 matches.
Yeah, why don't you do that? I think that will maybe bring us even.
So I also have to add here before we get to my card that I am not necessarily like fully in on all the AI stuff, but in regards to Google search and the AI feature, it is a godsend for wrestling fans because any wrestling fan knows in years past, if you're trying to find a specific match or a hard to find event or something like that, you had to do digging to find a lot of this stuff. And now you could type in pretty much anything and it'll come up. For example, I typed in who were the free agents in December of 1988, and it gave me a list.
Nice. That's good. I do the long-term fantasy booking that we've talked about, and sometimes I'm running a match. I'll put in a name what are the, for example, because Wahoo McDaniels is on the show. What are the signature moves of Wahoo McDaniels? And it'll give me a list of his 6 or 7 moves that he did in most matches, which is great to use when running a match.
Absolutely. So I say that because there's only one time I like it was like a minor, like kind of bending of time a little bit, and you'll see what I
I
mean.
have a couple. I think I have two we'll say bendy situations.
Yeah. So my first one is the six man. I did keep Chavo, Hector, and Mondo Guerrero together,
Mhm.
and I have them going against Vern Gagne, Greg Gagne, and another family member, Larry Zabisco. So Larry was basically out of the NWA at this point. I think it would be either the end of December or January where he kind of, you know, was fully out and was back with AWA, but it hadn't quite happened yet. But it was like basically there. So that's my one kind of. But he's a member of the Gagne family.
He was married to Vern's daughter. Were they married at this time?
You know what? That's a great
I
question.
did not look that. I do know that they were. See, he was. Larry was the final AWA champion circa 1990, and they were married at that point. And I think we had talked about this on a previous show that there has been rumors that when Triple H as Terra Rising first started with WCW, he had worked with Larry Zbyszko, and Larry said, "Hey, if you ever get to a company and the owner has a daughter about your age, you marry her and you hold on to it."
I think I remember hearing about that.
Yeah,
Well, you know what? Maybe my fantasy card is where they met for the first time.
sure, that'll work too.
So yeah, I have that as my first opening match. You know, Vern was 2 years retired at this point, but I feel like this makes sense. You have a family versus family situation here. I think it's a good way to get the card started. You have the high flying of the Guerreros, which was the main selling point of the actual match that was on the card,
Mhm.
and you have the Gagne family with some classic wrestling there. You have something to do for Greg and I feel like this would be decent if given enough time.
Certainly, and especially if you have someone like maybe saying Larry doing a bulk of the work, it's kind of a strange matchup because I'm not sure who's playing heel here.
Yeah, it's kind
Uh,
of a face versus face affair.
yeah, and a bit, Larry's more of a face, but we're in AWA territory. But definitely, those are guys that could work together. And even with Vern's age and the fact that Greg was never very good, if they're coming in and out a lot, that works.
Yeah. My next match. So I also, when I looked at who was available, I looked at the rosters of the AWA, of CWA, of WCCW, and another company that is represented on the actual card. We'll get to that, but and one of the names that I saw was Bam Bam Bigelow. So I have Bam Bam Bigelow versus Cactus Jack in a no disqualification match. Now, obviously, this is early Cactus Jack. He had
Yeah.
not quite reached the hardcore legend part of his career, but I still feel like these guys will be able to put on a good match. I think I read that they've been in matches together or against each other, maybe tag matches, but I don't know if they ever had like a televised one-on-one. So I also thought that would be a cool way to use both these guys because I feel like even if you give them like 8 to 10 minutes, they get everybody's attention. So
Yeah, that surprises me, especially when they were in ECW, because I think, well, they may have missed each other in ECW actually. But no, I like that matchup too. Again, this is early on with Cactus Jack. But yeah, no DQ definitely, I think, plays to both of their strengths as brawlers and around this time. And I do something similar with Jack, and I did something similar with my opener. I have the Guerrero family still together, Mando, Hector, and Chavo, but they're going to go against a Samoan SWAT team of Samu, Fatu, and Kokina, or the Great Kokina, or Kokina Maximus, also known as Yokozuna. So at this time, Yoko was actually wrestling in Japan, but had worked with the other members of his family prior to that in a lot of the different indies. So I definitely think it would be available for Kokina to either come back from Japan or to have not left and have stayed and to wrestle. So you've got, with this matchup, for me, classic, high flying, fast, speedy baby faces against the brutal Samoan foreign heel faction. And of course, I think the weight and the power of the Samoans would defeat the Guerreros, and the Samoans win here.
I like that. I think that works good. I also used the Great Coquina, but we'll get to that a little bit later.
Okay.
I thought about doing the Samoan team up, but I went a different route. But yeah, no, I like that a lot. I think that sounds very logical. My next match is the Rock and Roll Express versus who I believe at this time were the IWGP Tag Team Champions, Masa Saito and Riki Koshu.
Oh, shoot.
So the IWGP champion, Tatsumi Fujinami,
Yes.
was at the actual event. So I thought, okay, if he was there, then it stands to reason that a relationship could have been formed to have some of those wrestlers at the event as well. I made a point to use New Japan, not All Japan, because All Japan, I think, had deals going with, there's some of those guys that you would see in NWA.
Yes.
So I didn't want to use that. So I used, strictly when I used strictly in New Japan guys. So, you have Japanese style wrestling against the Rock and Roll Express. I think that this would be an excellent match. Masa Saito is excellent. And I really think that this could be, kind of the strong style versus the high flying in a good way. So.
Oh, definitely. The Rock and Roll could work with anybody. I think introducing the Japanese style of wrestling in this way to an American audience is a very good way to go. And that match is way better than what I did with the Rock and Roll Express, which is having them face the Rock and Roll RPMs of Mike Davis and Tommy Lane. There were a lot of rip-offs of the Rock and Roll Express at this time because of how popular they were. And the RPMs are the exact definition of we have the Rock and Roll Express at home. So it's a very easy story of having Morton and Gibson confronting these guys and saying, hey, we're the real deal, you're not, and wanting to prove it to them. So definitely, I think Gibson and Morton could get a really good match out of Davis and Lane, but ultimately the Rock and Roll Express have to win this. But I do think this, not as good as the match that you have, but I do think this could be a good match given some time.
I know, I like that. I mean, it's rock and roll versus rock and roll. I think it makes sense. My next match is Gentleman Chris Adams versus Jeff Jarrett for the WCWA light heavyweight title. I just tried to pick two guys that fit the light heavyweight, division, and I wanted to keep Jeff Jarrett on the card. People talk about the whole nepotism aspect of it. The Jerry Jarrett's CWA was represented.
Right. Everyone's kid was on here.
Yeah, I mean, but Jeff Jarrett, we know, can actually wrestle. So, and Gentleman,
especially at this time, he was young but very good early on.
Yeah, Gentleman Chris Adams was not on the card, but he is a member of either WCCW or AWA at this point.
He was world class at the time, I believe, still.
Yeah, and so I think that this would be a good match. I don't know who would play heel and who would play face, but maybe Jarrett would be the face. But I
believe Adams was working as heel at this time, and Jarrett was a face at this time, so that probably would work. And Adams was a little more of a veteran over Jarrett.
Yeah.
Good matchup, good idea. I think you dipped into the pool of free agents a little bit more than I did, which is certainly okay. We do that for these shows.
Definitely.
My next bout is I have for the rights to the fabulous Freebird's name, Michael P.S. Hayes versus Buddy Jack Roberts. So Roberts didn't wrestle, but was managing against Hayes. The Freebirds had broken up. There was animosity between Roberts and Hayes. So let's escalate that more. Let's do a full-on I'm what the Freebirds are really all about type of fight over that name. And then again, if this partnership continues forward, having Hayes reform the Freebirds or create a new version of Freebirds would be great. I think to help promote some guys and to have a stable to rally some things around. So and Hayes, of course, would reform the Freebirds in the early '90s with Jimmy Garvin, WCW. So Hayes was always considered to be kind of the nucleus of that. So I would have Hayes win here. I don't know if Hayes and Roberts ever wrestled against each other, or there was ever sort of a Freebirds explode type of match. But that's what I did here.
I like that. I think it's a match that makes sense. Makes me wonder if some of those guys ever faced each other. We'll have to look that up for a match review. My next match, we don't need to say much about it here. It is one of my title unification matches, though. Wendy Richter versus Peggy Lee Leather. AWA and POW title unification match. I wasn't going to do the Battle Royal. I certainly wasn't going to do the lingerie aspect of the Battle Royal. But, you have these ladies here. Why not give them a showcase? I would have loved to have used Medusa, who's maybe not at this point, but would become certainly like a great female talent. And, there's other ones there as well. You have, the woman who would become Ivory as well. So I didn't use them, but I just went with the unification match here. Who knows if it would be any good, but there you have it.
Well, I've got something a little bit different, but close to that coming up in a little bit. But right now, I do have a six-person intergender tag team match. I did go that route to use some of the women. And I have the Iron Sheik, Colonel De Beers, and the Syrian terrorist with Sheik Adnan Al Casey versus Jeff Jarrett, Steve Cox, and Brandy May.
All right.
So foreign heels versus the blonde, squeaky clean baby faces. As we know from the promos, and just about all of the women got promos on the actual show.
Yeah.
The Syrian terrorist and Brandy May were the two women who were having a storyline and the feud from POW. So that can actually play in the things here. Like the opener, I think the heels out muscle the baby faces and win this. And I would say of all the women, I kind of liked the Syrian terrorist. I liked her attitude. I think she was attractive for the time period. So I kind of wanted to use her, and it made sense to put those three together. And so then I just kind of scrapped around to find the baby faces for them to go over.
Yeah, I liked her as well, and I think that sounds like intergender matches are what they are, but I think that one sounds like it makes sense to me, and I think it would go off pretty well. My next match, I thought about changing it, and it's not a match that you would see at this time because, they didn't do triple threats or what this is, which is a fatal four-way. But like, I just, you'll see why I used it the way I did. It's for the international television title, Ron Garvin versus the Iron Sheik versus Kamala versus Masahiro Chono. So you really have the international flavor represented here, Leonard.
Yes.
And
I
that's
like that.
the whole point of it. So I'd probably still have Ron Garvin go over here. He was on the actual card, as was Iron Sheik. But yeah, so this is what it is. I wanted to put the international television title on here somehow. And I wanted to, there's so many people from other countries represented in these companies that might as well give them something to do. So,
as you know, I love Ronnie Garvin. You'll see how I used him. I like the idea of everyone. I think Garvin Chono straight up would be way better than including Sheik and Kamala here, but I understand why you did that.
Yeah.
And I think this would be a car crash, but it would probably be one that would entertain me at the very least because of the talent involved here. Next up, I have an Indian strap match featuring Wahoo McDaniel, and he's going to go up against Cactus Jack. So doing some snooping on the internet, it appears that Wahoo McDaniel was in more than 100 Indian strap matches in his career and won all of them. If there's anybody on the card who would work that gimmick and give McDaniel a run for his money, it's Cactus Jack, even though, as we said, this is early on in his career. He's going to get juice. He's going to sell like crazy. He'll do his signature spots like the cactus clothesline, the cactus elbow, probably the nesty plunge to the floor. It's going to be brutal. It's going to be bloody. So I think Jack is a good replacement to keep that Indian strap match here, and would probably be better than what we got on the actual show and be just as bloody.
I like that. Yeah, I think that would be a great way to use the strap match for sure. Definitely a match I would watch. So my next match is tag match. It is Bad Company, Paul Diamond and Pat Tanaka against Scott Recksteiner and Billy Joe Travis. So,
Billy Joe Travis is a deep cut, dude.
well, they were a tag team and they were the CWA tag team champions at this
Okay.
time.
Did not know that. I know the name, and I knew he was in Memphis, Billy Joe Travis.
Scott Steiner was not yet Scott Steiner and was not yet teamed with his brother, who
Mm-hmm.
was in the NWA. So I saw that they were a tag team, and I was like, you know what? Let's use him here. So yeah, I think that you have to have the tag champs go over in this case. But Bad Company, I think, is an underrated tag team, and that's why I went with this matchup.
Yeah, I did not know that Steiner and Billy Joe Travis were a tag team. I like that deep pull, and I do love Bad Company. I think they're underrated. We'll get to them on my show. But next up, I have the IWGP Grand Prix Championship match. As we mentioned, Tatsumi Fujinami was on the show. Let's use him, and he's going to face Nick Bockwinkel.
Oh,
So,
wow.
technical masterpiece, gear change from my last match of the Indian Strap match. Bockwinkel was out of the AWA and kind of retired by this time. He did wrestle a few times in the 1990s. He had wrestled in a battle royal for the WWF, I think, earlier in '88. But if Vern calls him and says, "Hey, would you come in? Would you help with the show? Would you like to wrestle Fujinami?" I think Nick does that. I think Nick comes in, and I think it's one of the bigger names that the AWA had they could still pull out. The fact that he's coming out of retirement, the belt's on the line. I think especially in Chicago, in an AWA stalwart town, this would be a match that a lot of people would be very, very interested in. And of course, Fujinami's not dropping the title outside of Japan to a semi-retired old man. But I don't think Nick loses clean. This is going to be a count out or a DQ loss for Nick Bockwinkel. But I do think this has the potential to be the best match on my card.
You know what? I love the fact that you used Nick Bockwinkel. I didn't even think about using him, but I think it makes sense here. And my next match is with Tatsumi Fujinami as well, but it's not with Nick Bockwinkel, but it is for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship, and it is another guy who was a free agent at this time, was not with a company. He had left the WWF, and that is Paul Orndorff.
Okay, yeah.
I have Paul Orndorff versus Tatsumi Fujinami. There are free agents that I didn't use, and some of them are kind of like I really wanted to use like some more guys, but the matchup I thought was the best was this one, but you mentioning Nick Bockwinkel makes more sense, so I like that one slightly better, but this one might be good as well. So.
Oh no, Orndorff could still go at this point. He didn't have the nerve damage hindering him as it would years later. Was coming off of being one of the top guys in the WWF at one point. So that's definitely name value that helps here. And Orndorff, I think, is underrated as a worker. He could work with different guys. I think this is good. My next match gets to something you've referenced, a fatal four-way for the Unified Women's title.
Okay.
I'm going to use Medusa versus Wendy Richter versus Nina, who would later become Ivory, versus Luna Vachon. Now, Peggy Lee Leather is probably a better choice who you use because Luna was very green at this point. But going off of my name recognition, I went with Luna.
Yeah.
So this is just a way to get the women on the card. A fatal four-way is very unique for this time period. If anybody could work that, it would be these women. Again, they are for the better women of the 1980s. Although they are relatively green still, aside from Wendy. I think she's the most experienced of all the women here. I would have Richter win, as she did on the regular show, to claim the title. And she can beat, say, Luna, and then that would set up something down the road with Medusa. But to get all these four women in the ring together in this type of unique matchup, I think would be at least interesting to have this as a time capsule.
No, I like that. Like I said, I wanted to use more of the women. I really wasn't sure how that would make sense. I thought about using just kind of having a good dream match with Luna Vachon involved, but I didn't get there. All right, so my next match is Sergeant Slaughter versus Dr. Death Steve Williams in a steel cage. I thought about just going with the boot camp and keeping that, but I was like, why am I? Let's have a steel cage. Let's shake it up a little bit. And I just think I don't know if these two guys I'm sure must have been on opposite side of the ring at some point, but I feel like these guys, especially at this era, would be able to put on some great stuff. So
Yeah, I mean, even if you see Slaughter a couple years after this, when he went back and turned heel in WWF, he had dropped off a lot from even this point of what he could do. I don't know if Slaughter and Williams ever would have had a match. They seem like two guys who kind of maybe just missed each other in a lot of different places.
yeah,
Williams, I believe, was in Japan at this point again, right? And yeah, and steel cage. The only thing is I've never liked the steel cage match like in the middle of a show or with matches left to go because you have to put it up and take it down.
true.
And that's and in a logistical real world setting, you have to consider that.
Right.
Although here, who cares? Doesn't matter. You could have the POW women do like a bikini contest.
No, you know what? You know what you could have after the steel cage match. I had it after my next match, but after the steel cage match, there's a commercial for Herb Abrams UWF.
Yes, there you go.
Have that. Herb is there. There's cocaine, prostitutes, all of it, and
cowboy boots, everything that Herb Abrams loves. I like that. Let's do that to give them some time. I could see this being surprisingly good and bloody. I could see Slaughter getting slaughtered in this thing, but I do like that. I do like that a lot. I didn't think about that. So I have next up. I know the more I think about it, the more I don't like it. It's loser can no longer call themselves king as Jerry the King Lawler faces Iceman King Parsons.
Oh my God.
So I wanted to use Lawler, and I did not get as creative with free agency as you did. And I didn't want to use him in the main event. I wanted to do something different. So, I think this is easy to set up on TV as all the different companies start to work more and intermingle. It's very easy to have Jerry Lawler take exception to somebody else calling himself king. And, so he's cutting promos. Parsons is cutting promos. It leads to this match. There's no way that Jerry Lawler loses. So we have Iceman Parsons coming out of this. And this was just a way to use Jerry in a prominent way, in a prominent storyline and feud for this show and keep him near that main event scene to vault him up into that eventually as these companies work together. So I admit this is not the greatest matchup, but I like the idea. It almost now feels to me like Superman, Batman, Martha, the Martha line. Okay. Like, you're king, I'm king. Why did you say king? That's what I'm saying here. But I've always thought Parsons was a really cool guy, if not the greatest wrestler. And again, this is just something to give Jerry something to do.
Well, this is a very interesting way of using Jerry Lawler, Leonard, and the King feud. I suppose that could fit. Color me shocked that you use Jerry Lawler in this way.
Yeah, nobody else would have.
All right. You know what? Technically wise, I don't know. It would be a match, and it would be a match on this card.
It would be a match on this card. Yes, that's the best you can say.
It would be a match of all time. So my next match is tag team match. It is the Samoan SWAT team versus the Great Coquina and Big Van Vader, who apparently were a tag team.
Really? That's insane. In Japan? Over in Japan?
Yeah. So I just thought, get all these guys in the ring, have them beat the crap out of each other. It's, you have the Samoan connection there with the Great Coquina. You could even have shenanigans with the Great Coquina turning on Vader and make it a case for Vader, and he just beats the crap out of everybody. So there you have it.
I think the turn works, and then that sets up something for down the road with all these guys. And I'll mention here, I'm in a long-term booking federation, and we just had a dispersal draft from a guy who stopped doing it, and I managed to pick up Vader. No, I already had Vader. I picked up Brock Lesnar, and I'm going to do Lesnar versus Vader at some point.
That would have been epic if that
in their primes.
Absolutely.
So I have a tag match next, and is to unify whatever tag team titles we have laying around. The Von Erichs of Kerry and Kevin Von Erich versus Bad Company of Paul Diamond and Pat Tanaka with their manager, Diamond Dallas Page. So this is probably, I think, my best match on the card. This has potential to be the best match on the card. It was one of those matchups that I think maybe I strategically booked everything else around it because I wanted to do this match. Again, as we said earlier, Bad Company, very underrated, very good talents at this time. The Von Erich brothers, of course, were very good as a tag team together. This is a very high-profile matchup for this card, considering where both these teams were in their respective companies. I think it's a very good match. I say give this a half hour. Let Kevin play face in peril to Bad Company. Let Kerry get the hot tag. I think you definitely have the Von Erichs win because you need world class to get something on this show. Let them have the unified belts. Let that be something they center their shows around maybe for a while as this partnership tries to continue on. But as I said, Bockwinkel and Fujinami could have been definitely a match of the night contender, and this would be my other one, I think.
I think this just sounds like a great match. And it's a great use of the Von Erichs. I also use them in a different way, though. But yeah, I mean, it would be a terrific match, and I think it makes sense to if you're going to have the partnership continue to have them be tag champs. I think it makes more sense that way. So my next series of matches, like you could have these be like kind of back-to-back main events, or you could have this be like a mini tournament of sorts.
Okay.
To unify the titles. So my first match is Jerry Lawler versus Antonio Inoki for the AWA World Heavyweight Championship. You have Inoki there. We're using New Japan. Lawler is there. As far as I could tell, these guys didn't have a one-on-one match. I don't know if it would be a technical classic. I don't know how much their styles would mesh, but I think that they could put on a good enough match between like the careers that both have had up until this point that I think, and it's two very high profile names. So I think this is my first match, is to have a winner between these two guys, which I would probably have it be Lawler. So
considering that we're in the U.S. and it's for the AWA title, not for any New Japan belt, Inoki would probably be okay, and it would probably be by cheating. Lawler would cheat to win here, and that's fine. This is not you. I did not dig as deep into Japan as you did here, so this is almost a 4-way show with the New Japan being part of things as well,
right?
Which works fine. I think that's totally legitimate. I like the idea of Inoki and Lawler together. And you mentioned, this would be a great match. I think a lot of people, when they think of Jerry Lawler, is the type of style that he used in the WWF. Prior to that, working in Memphis, he was a good worker.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he would be smart enough to wrestle Inoki's style of match here. So I do think this has potential to be a very good match.
All right.
And then I have my main event, which is a title unification match. And it's Sergeant Slaughter versus the man with the hands of stone, Ronnie Garvin.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I tried different combinations of Slaughter, Garvin, Von Erich, and Lawler, because to me, those are your 4 biggest names that you have on this card. And if I wasn't going to use Lawler or Kerry Von Erich or even Kevin in the main event, Garvin is just a year away from being the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Sergeant Slaughter has that G.I. Joe connection. So those are your 2 kind of biggest, names to a larger mainstream audience outside of your typical AWA, CWA, world-class people. These guys are known all over the country, pretty much. So I figured put them together. Now, of course, who's the heel, who's the face? They're both AWA at this point. Doesn't matter. If you give this some time, send Garvin down to Texas for a little bit, have him turn heel into Von Erichs, have him win the belt down there, come back up, have Slaughter win the belt at some point, or have it be the America's title or whatever belt. I mean, they're just calling it the unified title. They do that on the show. It could be any belts. Who cares? So, and again, I don't know if Garvin and Slaughter ever would have had a match or had an accustomed to have a match together. As I was saying earlier, Slaughter could still wrestle at this point as opposed to just a few years later. And Ronnie Garvin was still very good up until the early 90s. I think Garvin is very underrated as a worker. All the time on Jim Cornette's podcast, Cornette always talks about how good of a worker that Garvin was. And you have to remember in '87, Ric Flair wanted to work with Ronnie Garvin. Look, if we're going to do this lame dunk thing, um, Garvin's the guy I want to do it. And Garvin's a company guy. So Garvin, I would have Garvin win. And then you can do Garvin versus Kerry or Kevin versus Jerry Lawler versus even someone like a Michael Hayes or a Wahoo McDaniel who would get big wins earlier on my show. So I think Garvin's a guy that you put up against a lot of different guys and would do whatever you wanted because, again, he's a company guy. So he might be someone that the three promoters could agree on to be their standard bearer, at least at the start of this.
I was also going to use Slaughter in my main event in the title unification part of it, simply because he was, one of the biggest names on the card. And so I thought about going that route, but then I kind of thought about other things. But I like you using him here. I'm not surprised you use Ronnie Garvin. Obviously, you're a big Ronnie Garvin fan. I think that what you say, though, makes sense. Like, you could put a storyline together that puts those two guys against each other. And I think that they could have a pretty decent match as well. So I like that. We'll see how you feel about my main event, which is a bit of a gamble. It is for the WCWA World Heavyweight Championship, and it is Kerry Von Erich versus Kevin Von Erich.
I have thought that's what you were going to do.
Yeah. So
early on, I thought that's what you were going to do.
It never happened, and it seems almost sacrilege to say these two guys should have had a feud against each other, because it's like, oh, the Von Erichs, they're always faces and they're always family and always tight knit. I think, based on what we know with wrestling history, I think it's very doable to have these guys have a one-on-one match that is simply brothers being competitive against each other. They still respect each other. They still love each other. But Kevin wants the title. Kerry has it. Only one way to settle it: have a match together. And I think that they would have put on a barn burner of a match. Who better to protect Kerry's injury after the motorcycle accident than his brother? I think that this could have been terrific. They never went this route in real life, unfortunately. I think that they could have flirted with different angles to kind of shake things up in WCCW, but that's just my opinion. So I would have, and here's the kicker. Mm-hmm. You could have Kerry win here and then have it be Kerry versus Lawler for the title unification, which is the actual main event from the actual card. Only I would have given it an actual finish, which would be Kerry going over, because I think that makes more sense, honestly.
Yeah.
So you don't have to go that route, though. The Von Erichs going against each other could have been a main event on its own.
Right, and then you could have had Lawler versus Kerry at a future show with them both holding the respective titles. You could do that too.
Right.
But yeah, I would almost probably do that because that feels almost anticlimactic. Yeah. Having Kevin and Kerry, and you could easily have like a tournament where Kevin keeps advancing, and Kerry being kind of, hey, of course my brother is going to advance in this tournament, but not wanting him to advance in the tournament. Right. And Kevin getting that, and again, just a little bit of animosity, but keeping it friendly. At one point in that long-term booking fed, I wound up getting all three of the Von Erich brothers, and I had David and Kevin, and then I eventually wound up getting Kerry, and I was going to play it that Kerry comes in and he turns on the other two because it was like, you were here without me, and you didn't even call. But that wound up kind of dissolving and things shifted. And I never got to do that. But I always had wanted to do like a Von Erich brother turn at some point.
And to me, like you could do a turn and have that make sense. I think if you're going to have somebody turn, you're going to have Kerry turn. I think
Kerry would probably turn. Yeah. They very rarely worked at heels, although I did know that they were heels in Florida. I don't think you need to have a turn here,
right?
Certainly, but I like the brother versus brother aspect, and I think that sells. I mean that.
Yeah.
The card that you have with those top handful of matches, would sell. That is a show that if today I came across SuperClash 3 and it's that, I go, man, I want to watch that. That sounds great.
You know what? I think both of our cards are better than the actual card.
Yeah.
Some
And
of the
again, it's using the talent better.
yeah,
It's not going overboard on the stipulations, but having something, it's having clear, easy to do storylines. And again, I think in our opinion, we would both give these matches more time. These will not be 5 to 7 minute matches. Probably most are going to be in the 10 to 15 minute range, with the main events being close to 20 to 30 minutes.
yeah. I mean, the actual card is like 2.5 hours or 2 hours 33 minutes, whatever it is. Like you could go to 3 hours, and everybody gets a little bit more time. Cut out some of the interviews with the females.
Right. Everyone, I think it was Brian Zane said in his review that it felt like part of the deal with Powell was we're going to give all your women time to talk.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I think every single one of them gets a backstage promo.
yeah. That's true. And so some of the people that I didn't use that I wanted to use, one the team that was on the actual card that I didn't use, the stud stable. Um,
Yeah,
I
I thought about them. I've always liked Robert Fuller. I used him extensively. When I first started doing the fantasy stuff, I was running CWA. So I was using Ron and Robert Fuller very heavy on when I first started to do that.
that needs to be. We need to look up some match reviews for the Fullers. And so what? Another free agent who did go by this name at this time, Sid Vicious, and
Really? He
I
would
was
have
like,
been
I could
already.
change his name to John Fuller and have him be a long lost brother of the Fullers and have a 6 man. I didn't go that route.
I love that because it's like small, medium, large
Yeah,
on that. So he was already Lord Humongous in Memphis. So, but he had started to work Sid Vicious by this point.
that's what I read. That he
Yeah,
had
he did.
that
When did he
name.
debut for WCW? 89?
Yeah, I think so. It
Maybe
wasn't
around
too
there.
long
So
after this. This was
not too long after this.
yeah. Another person, Billy Jack Haynes, was available.
He would have been excellent considering the time period and his name value for this
Yeah,
type of show.
Stan Hansen and Terry Taylor were both free agents.
Terry Taylor could have done something with Jarrett or something in the light heavyweight
Funny, I
capacity.
thought about that as a match instead of Chris
Yeah.
Adams. I was like, oh, I could use Terry Taylor, and then I
Yeah.
thought about using Terry Taylor instead of Orndorff, and but none of that made as much sense. So, like, I ended up not being able to use him.
The only thing I would think of Stan Hansen is he could kick the crap out of Cactus Jack.
That's, I'm sure Mick Foley would have loved to have that match on this card.
Yes, love to sell his ass off for Stan Hansen. Yeah.
so, so yeah. Anyway, let us know what you thought of our card, both of our cards, and if they are better or worse than the actual Super Clash card. Hopefully, you think they are better.
If you think they're worse, I want a 1,000 word essay explaining.
Absolutely. And you know what, Leonard? I think that we could keep this Super Clash thing going. We don't have to do a rebook, but we could watch Super Clash 4 and just do a straight review of that. And because I'm curious.
I have not watched Super Clash 4. I do believe it is available
It
on
is.
YouTube.
Yeah, I looked. It is. Yeah.
I believe it's very bad.
You know what? We should watch it and then decide if we want to do a review of it or do something completely different. Like,
We could even do a very short recap of it or just highlights of it. But yeah, let's put a pin in watching Super Clash 4
yeah.
and seeing how that turns out.
All right.
I don't remember, so that was nice. So this would have been AWA running on fumes.
Yes.
And we did do an unstable stable at one point of the dying days of the AWA. Remember that? We did that.
Yep.
It was, I think, I pulled every name who worked the show in the last 6 months of the
Yep.
company. So
Yep.
we like to visit the dying days of the AWA.
Yeah.
That's a favorite.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens down the road. Let us know what you thought of Super Clash 3 in general. Check out our other episodes. We're available wherever you listen to podcasts. Hit the like button, subscribe to our content. For Leonard, my name is Chad, and we will see you next time.